The privatization process of Japanese national railways and its impact. Supplemental Edition. In Japan, the privatization process of Japanese national railways, JNR, is in general considered to be a success. The autonomous management by each JR company promoted competition and greatly benefited users. However, when the JNR reform was implemented, a wide variety of issues were discussed.
戦後の急速な経済や社会環境のこの変化と相まって国鉄の経営は悪化の一途をたどるばかりでありました。頻発するストライキやそれから毎年のように繰り返される運賃値上げ、職場規律の乱れとか、それからサービスの低下とか、こうした中で経営の自主自立と地域密着ということを虎視とするこの国鉄改革案はですね、画期的な改革案であったなと。ただこの改革実現のためには2つの大きな課題がありまして、余剰人員の解決とそれと積み重なった37兆に上る膨大な累積債務処理を一体どうするのかという課題があったということなんですね。で、結果的なんですけど、これらに対して本当に官民一体となった国を挙げてのですね、取り組みがなされた結果ですね、改革がなされたということと、またそれらを強力に推し進めた時の政権のリーダーシップということがこの改革実現のですね、大きなファクターになったというふうに考えております。
Four revival attempts have been taken to deal with the declining business conditions of JNR since 1969. While the Supervisory Committee for JNR Reconstruction was set up in 1983 to press ahead with the essential concept of a vital necessity to divide and privatize JNR. The committee formulated the JNR Reconstruction Plan to divide JNR into 6 passenger companies and 1 freight company and corporatize. $25.5 trillion yen of JNR's total long-term debts of 37.1 trillion yen was taken over by JNR's Settlement Corporation. Proceeds from sales of land transferred from JNR and stocks of each JR company were used for repayment. However, such sales did not go smoothly, increasing the debt to 28.3 trillion yen. Therefore, the national government assumed a part of the long-term debt, which amounted to 16.7 trillion yen at the end of fiscal year 2018. For JR Hokkaido, JR Shikoku, and JR Kyushu, the Management Stabilization Fund was set up as their asset because they were likely to be in the red from the beginning, and the mechanism to cover the deficit with the fund's investment profit was established. This fund is said to be in effect a governmental subsidy scheme. Later, JR Kyushu sold all its shares and was fully privatized in 2016 as a result of various management efforts, such as improvement in rail travel service, initiatives of town development through related business, and tourism development. In 1965, JNR still employed 460,000 workers, but the number fell to 270,000 in 1986 due to rationalization and outsourcing. 200,000 out of the remaining workforce were hired by the JR companies. After the reform, JNR's Settlement Corporation also implemented an employment support plan targeting 36,000 former JNR employees, excluding voluntary and non-voluntary retirees, and help them find other employment at governmental organizations, local governments, and private companies, thereby realizing a public-private partnership and employment mediation support. This would not have been possible without the cooperation of ministries, agencies, and private enterprises. Thus, for smooth railway management, support from an entity such as the central government may be vital. Rail administrators like you need to consider whether state assistance is necessary even after privatization, according to the circumstances of each country. Against the backdrop of the global trend of deregulation, some countries in Europe and China privatized the rail business or corporatized railway operators whose shares are held by the central government. However, most of the urban railways in cities around the world are managed by public organizations. To begin with, investment in railway infrastructure development requires massive funds. Recovering that money takes a very long time, and it is usually quite difficult for a private company alone to run an urban railway business. Regarding this, Japan's achievement of constructing and managing an urban railway with private capital is a special case, and only possible with various preconditions.
日本の国鉄改革の特徴は、後に誕生する6つの旅客鉄道会社がインフラを保有して、そして独立した経営を行っているという点にあります。このような国鉄改革が実現した前提条件としては、まずはじめに地理的条件が挙げられます。東京都市圏をはじめ、多くの都市が旅客輸送にふさわしい海岸線上に位置しているわけですので、これによって海外と比較するとはるかに多くの旅客を運んでいるという状況にありました。2つ目の前提条件としましては、1987年改革当時にはすでに日本の鉄道網が成熟していたという点です。これによって新しく誕生する旅客鉄道会社は新線建設など極めて大きな設備投資というのは必ずしも行う必要がなかったという点です。3番目の条件としましては、改革当時にはすでに鉄道を安全正確に運営できる技術力と経営ノウハウを国鉄が蓄積していたという点が挙げられます。
The development of railways in Japan can be attributed to rail infrastructure construction before the advancement of motorization. In the late 19th century, Japan relied on land transport such as express messengers, palanquins, rickshaws, horses, and so on. Then in 1872, Japan saw the opening of its first railway, followed by the rapid development of a rail network. From about 100 years since the launch of Japan's first railway until the arrival of the motorization wave, railways could dominate land transport. During this period, without any other competing mode of transport, the number of users increased, and costs were relatively easy to recover. In addition, in these 100 years, when automobile traffic was in its infancy, infrastructure development, which forms the basis of the rail business, had been achieved. Railway development is also attributable to the fact that railways were constructed in the period before full-scale urbanization. Building rail infrastructure once urbanization has reached the stage we are at today would require massive costs and time for land acquisition, coordination with city facilities, and environmental measures. In Japan, railway development drove modernization, which made land acquisition easier. In addition, railway-centered town planning had been implemented at an early stage, while rail networks were being constructed in Japan. Since the late 19th century, railway stations have been at the center of urban development and improvement in Japan. Any areas in front of a station are regarded as a first-class district, attracting many people. Because of Japan's mountainous geography, the population tends to concentrate on coastal plains. Population density is high compared to the US and Europe, creating social and geographic conditions suitable to rail transport. the higher the ridership, the higher the rail transport revenues. The conditions in which the population, workplaces, and commercial facilities concentrate around a station are favorable for railways. With privatization, JR East, JR Central, and JR West in particular could expect to generate large revenues, as the population is concentrated in the urban areas of Tokyo and Osaka, and many commuters use those lines. The utilization of high-value land, which was taken over from JNR, was naturally considered a major management resource. The JR companies were able to enter multiple business sectors using land on which many restrictions were imposed during the JNR days. Also, each JR company at the time of its inception owned infrastructure from which it could expect a stable and long-term recovery of funds, which had a positive effect on business management. Before the reform of JNR, in the metropolitan area, a large-scale project called the Five-Direction Commuting Campaign was initiated in 1964. The congestion rate during the morning rush hours in the capital area exceeded 200%, and JNR launched a commuter line improvement plan in the metropolitan area with a sweeping effort. A large amount of money was spent for the doubling and quadrupling of tracks. The Tokaido Shinkansen, a high-speed rail line, was opened in 1964. Although enormous costs far greater than the initial estimation were necessary, revenues and profit which matched the invested amount gradually increased, driven by high economic growth, and subsequently the Sanyo Shinkansen, the Tohoku Shinkansen, and the Joetsu Shinkansen were opened. These kinds of infrastructure development projects usually require a huge amount of initial costs. Even after the opening, it takes decades to recover the costs. Furthermore, a private company alone cannot afford investments as enormous as that of the Five-Direction Commuting Campaign or Shinkansen projects. On the other hand, during the JNR era, JNR's own funds were used for capital investment, which had a limitation. Currently, based on the lessons learned from those days, new Shinkansen line construction projects use a funding scheme in which national and local government funds are provided. Another distinctive feature was that at the time of privatization, each JR company possessed expertise in transport operations and maintenance work. It is worth noting that Japan has more railway operators compared to other countries, as numerous privately operated railways emerged in the early days of its railway history. Competition and cooperation existed early on between JNR and other private rail companies, enhancing their expertise and allowing them to learn from each other. That was why the companies and contractors were all equipped with sufficient ability and technical capacity regarding train operations management and maintenance when being privatized, as they had accumulated know-how during the JNR days. Moreover, strong political leadership, which has driven the development of railways, should be noted. JNR faced a shortage of funds due to its investment into Shinkansen projects, and construction work of local lines began to be stalled. Then, in 1964, the Japan Railway Construction Public Corporation was established jointly by the national government and JNR, aiming to construct new railway lines and leasing or selling completed rail facilities to JNR. This was an organization that built local rail networks with public funds and sold them to JNR. The government, with the intention of actively promoting construction of new local rail lines, newly established this organization, separated new railway projects from JNR, and expanded the railway network to local areas with its political leadership. The reform of JNR was undertaken under the strong leadership of the government and the ruling party, with Yasuhiro Nakasone, who became prime minister during a series of administrative reforms after serving as head of the Administrative Management Agency, playing a central role. Until the passage of the JNR reform bills, the enthusiasm and efforts of numerous people supported this major reformation. Also at JNR, difficult reconstruction efforts were spearheaded by the new management team, which promoted reform and mobilized all relevant organizations. Personnel downsizing afterwards could not have been achieved without the cooperation of ministries, agencies, and private companies, but only under the strong leadership of the government. The development of railways involved politicians, working people, users, and many others. The privatization process of JNR and railway development have been achieved through the combination of a variety of conditions which are unique to Japan. The history of Japanese railways has gone through 3 system changes. However, amid a declining population and the rising necessity for more convenient rail transport development in terms of public infrastructure, we should continue to keep an eye on what Japanese railway business management will look like in several years.